Jonny Quest struck.
Before the adventure, before the science, before the flying machines and the laser guns and all those locations that made you feel like the world was genuinely enormous, there was a decision made in a network boardroom. And that decision is why you never got to see how this story ended. By the time we're done here, you'll understand not just what Jonny Quest became, but what it was actually designed to be, what the people who built it were trying to do. And the question of who the real villain of this story is, that one turns out to be more complicated than you might expect. The version of Jonny Quest that never quite made it to your Saturday morning, the one ABC fought, cut, and ultimately canceled, is the version that makes this show genuinely unlike anything else that ever aired on American children's television. 16 cuts, demanded before the first 7 episodes ever reached a screen. 16. And we're going to get into what was in those cuts, what the network was actually afraid of, and what got lost in the process. If this kind of deep dive into the cartoons that shaped you is what you're here for, subscribe and hit the bell. We go back into the vault every week, and some of what we find in there is genuinely worth sitting with. It starts not with a villain, but with a man who wanted to make something real.
Come on, boys. Let's get all the emergency equipment aboard the plane.
The new plane?
Yes, we'll leave it.
Beat 1. The human before the mask. The idea before anyone was afraid of it.
Horrible, isn't it? Then over there is where it came out of the forest.
Doug Wildey didn't think he was making a cartoon. That distinction matters more than it might seem, because it explains almost everything that came after. Wildey was a comic book artist, a serious one, the kind who understood that sequential storytelling has its own grammar, its own weight, its own ability to make you feel the impact of a fist or the cold of a dark corridor. When Hanna-Barbera approached him about developing an animated adventure series for ABC, he didn't reach for the comfortable shortcuts of the medium. No talking animals, no slapstick. He reached for what he actually knew, the adventure strip. The kind of storytelling that Johnny Hazard and Terry and the Pirates had built. Grounded, dangerous, adult in its stakes even when the audience was young. The concept he developed was a scientist, Dr. Benton Quest, traveling the world with his son Johnny on government-contracted research assignments, accompanied by a bodyguard named Race Bannon and a boy named Hadji. The locations were meant to feel real. The threats were meant to feel real. The science was meant to feel plausible. Producer Joseph Barbera described the show as science fiction with realism, featuring laser guns and jetpacks, aiming for a credible near future rather than fantasy where none of it carries weight. The intention was not escapism. It was plausibility. To bring that vision to the screen, Wildey brought in one of the most influential visual artists in American comics, Alex Toth. Toth's design philosophy matched Wildey's almost exactly. Clean, specific, nothing wasted. The characters didn't look like cartoon characters. Dr. Quest's silver hair and glasses. Race Bannon's jaw and bearing. Hadji's quiet watchfulness. They looked like people who had already been somewhere before the camera ever found them. There's a solidity to those designs that most animation of that era simply didn't have. And then there was the sound. Composer Hoyt Curtin, the same man behind the themes for the Flintstones and the Jetsons, brought something to Jonny Quest that none of those other shows had. Genuine tension. His score was jazz-inflected, sophisticated, built on minor keys and unexpected rhythmic breaks. When that theme hit, those brass stabs, that pulse underneath everything, it wasn't saying, "This is fun." It was saying, something is at stake here. Wildey reportedly named Dr. Benton Quest after Dr. Clay Benton, a personal friend connected to early space and rocketry development. This wasn't set dressing. This was a man trying to anchor a cartoon to the actual world, to the genuine scientific excitement of 1964, the year America was in the middle of a real race towards somewhere no one had been. That was the dream, a show that took adventure seriously, that respected its audience enough to show them something with actual weight to it. ABC was about to have some feelings about that.
Oh man, I'm glad that's over.
Beat 2, The Wound. The 16 cuts. Before a single episode aired, the letters started arriving. ABC's Broadcast Standards and Practices, the network's internal censorship division, had reviewed the early episodes and arrived at a conclusion that was not ambiguous. The show was, in their formal written assessment, extremely violent. They demanded 16 major cuts from just the first 7 episodes. That number is worth sitting with because it wasn't scattered objections to isolated moments. This was a systematic review of the show's core identity. The things Wildey and his team had built with care and deliberate intention were precisely the things the network flagged. Punching, kicking, strangling, the specific physical vocabulary of confrontation that, in any live-action adventure film of that era, would have passed without comment. In a cartoon, on Saturday morning, in 1964, unacceptable. Race Bannon was the specific target. The censors flagged his judo chops, his karate kicks. The fighting style Wildey had designed to feel credible, the kind of trained martial arts response a real government bodyguard might use, was deemed to be promoting violence rather than depicting it. A man protecting a child from genuine threats using skilled and controlled technique, that was the problem, not the threat. The competent response to danger was what they wanted softened. There were also specific rules around firearms. Guns could appear on screen, but framing was constrained. No explicit aiming at a character's head. No clear depiction of fatal intent. And then there was the robot spy episode. The climax involved the destruction of a menacing mechanical arachnid in an explosion, the kind of visceral payoff the whole episode had been built to deliver. The censors found the intensity excessive. The scene was altered. What the censors were doing was removing consequence from the show. Every cut, every judo chop toned down, every explosion blunted, took away the show's ability to communicate that actions have weight, that danger is actual, that the threat on screen is not abstract. Wildey had built a show where the adventure mattered because the stakes mattered. The network spent a season systematically removing the stakes. The original versions of those first episodes are largely undocumented now. The edited versions are what survived. 16 cuts, before a single child had watched a single frame.
The mongoose has pretty sharp teeth.
Yeah, he might mistake you for a snake.
Beat 3, The Choice. $65,000 per episode.
Lesson 1. When in India, don't open strange boxes either.
Here's the arithmetic that eventually killed Jonny Quest. Every episode cost $65,000 to produce, in 1964 dollars. For a cartoon. To understand what that number meant, you have to understand how Hanna-Barbera had built itself. The studio's model was built on efficiency, limited animation techniques that produced watchable content quickly and at low cost. The Flintstones worked within that model beautifully. The Jetsons worked within it. These were shows designed around budget constraints, and they were enormously successful partly because of that discipline. Jonny Quest was not operating in that mode. Wildey's animation style, the rapid cuts, the sophisticated camera movement, the detailed backgrounds that put you in actual specific locations, demanded more. More frames, more detail, more time. The result was a show that cost significantly more than anything comparable in network animation at the time. The choice the network faced wasn't complicated. On one side, a show costing considerably more than its competitors. On the other, a show their own censorship division had formally described as extremely violent, a liability requiring continuous monitoring across every production cycle. The question isn't why ABC canceled Jonny Quest after one season. The more interesting question is, what kind of institution receives something genuinely unprecedented, a cartoon functioning as a real adventure serial, with sophisticated visual grammar and characters who moved and fought with actual physicality, and whose primary responses are, cut the violence and watch the budget. There were alternatives. The show could have been moved to a different time slot. Someone could have made the case that what Wildey built wasn't violence for its own sake, but consequence. That argument was available to make. The record doesn't show anyone making it. Instead, ABC let the show run its single season, 26 episodes, while the Standards Division continued its work. When the season ended, the combination of cost and controversy made the cancellation straightforward. There was no planned finale. The Quest team simply stopped mid-mission, with an episode called The Fraudulent Volcano, and that was the end. No resolution, no goodbye.
All right. So you won't answer me.
Beat 4. The Price. What was lost in the archive?
Julio will show you your rooms.
The original cells are gone. The production artwork, the storyboards, the original animation cells for Jonny Quest were largely discarded or destroyed over time. Standard practice for animation studios of that era. Storage cost money, and art didn't carry value once its commercial purpose had been served. Most of what survived is now in private hands. Collectors who recognized what they were holding when the studios did not. Background paintings sold off individually. Cells distributed or simply thrown away. The original cuts ABC demanded, those 16 excisions, the judo sequences removed, the explosions softened. Those original versions are largely undocumented. We know they existed. We have a general sense of what was taken. But the unaltered episodes, what Wildey and his team actually produced before the network got to them, those are functionally gone. What we have is the edited version. The version deemed acceptable. The version deemed safe. We don't have the version that was deemed true. Even the small things in what did survive carry weight when you know to look for them. Don Messick, who also voiced Dr. Benton Quest, created Bandit's distinctive muffled bark by placing his hand over his own mouth and growling. An improvised technique found in the process of making the thing. Specific, human, discovered rather than manufactured. That quality was exactly what the network spent a season trying to edit out. And there's a clean irony in what that editing produced. Wildey built a show that assumed children could handle consequence, could watch a man use trained skill to protect someone he cared about, and understand that this was necessity, not glorification. The censors removed those elements in the name of protecting those same children. In doing so, they produced something closer to what they should have been worried about. A show where danger appears but doesn't land, where the stakes are implied but never quite real. They protected the audience from the truth of the show. And then they canceled it.
There, I thought we weren't gonna make it.
I was so scared. I forgot I was airsick.
So did
Beat 5. The Verdict. The Tribunal.
we have few guests.
It takes Bandit.
So here is what the record actually shows. Jonny Quest was built with genuine creative ambition at every level. Doug Wildey brought a comic book artist's respect for the grammar of action to a medium that had never seen it applied that way. Alex Toth built characters who looked like people rather than drawings. Hoyt Curtin scored it like it mattered. By every available account, it was something genuinely new. ABC's response was to cut 16 major moments before it aired, spend a full season monitoring its content, and cancel it when the combination of cost and unruliness made the calculation too uncomfortable. No planned ending. The physical artwork scattered. The creative vision left unresolved. That's the case for ABC as the villain here. ABC was operating in 1964. The serious conversations about television's influence on children were genuinely new, genuinely contested, genuinely unresolved. The network's censors weren't acting in bad faith. They were using the best frameworks available to them in an era before anyone had the data or the cultural distance to assess what a show like Jonny Quest was actually doing to its audience. The business decision to cancel wasn't arbitrary cruelty. It was a network doing the thing networks do when the numbers stop working. And the show still aired, all 26 episodes, watched and loved and remembered by a generation of men who are sitting somewhere right now hearing that theme music in their heads, feeling what it felt like to be 11 years old and watch Race Bannon put someone down with a judo chop and understand, viscerally, without anyone explaining it, that the world contains people who can actually do that. The censors couldn't cut everything. What Wildey built was strong enough to survive even its own trimming. So the question the tribunal needs to answer is this: was ABC protecting children from a show that was genuinely too much for them? Or were they protecting a business model from a show that was genuinely too good for it? Doug Wildey set out to make something real. He got 16 cuts and a cancellation. What Jonny Quest was meant to be. The full, unaltered version, with its consequences intact and its stakes honest. That version exists now only in fragments. Private collections, the memories of the people who made it. The original cells are gone. The ending never written. You're the jury. The comments are open.